And they're trying to see if you can go through subcomponents through this. Can you decompose the problem? And most important in these questions is not so much the answer, but actually how you get to the answer and whether you can support all your assumptions, okay, with reasonable explanations, okay? That is, to me, one of the key parts of this question, okay? So we're gonna go through that. And at the end, you know, do you actually check your answer versus some benchmarks, right? So just getting an answer at the end and not knowing whether you are off by a big number is not very good, right? So those issues are important. So let's go through the structure of this type of problem, okay? And I just wanted to put it here on the board. And so one good structure that I found for these problems is, the first one is scope down. Scope down your problem. By that I mean ask questions to actually find out what components you actually need to measure, okay, in these estimation questions. So sometimes these questions are open-ended on purpose to see if you can actually scope it down. Then the other one is, you know, ask 1 minute to think about the big equation, okay, the top equation. Then 3 is, this is really important. Before you even dive into explaining your estimation, you need to explain your top equation. Explain your top equation holistically. So, for example, in this case of the emails, right? We're gonna see that you know, holistically at the very beginning, what's important is to measure, well, you know, emails. Your equation is gonna be number of emails times number of users times the size of emails that they send, right? So before you even dive into that, you said to your interviewer, hey, you know, I think that one way to look at this is to look at the number of emails, the number of users, you know, count how many emails they send, you know, per day, and then what's the average size of their emails. And if you multiply all of that, that gives you the total. So if you explain that at the beginning, that's, you need to start with that. Then you draw your tree. Okay, we're gonna look at the tree. Then you need to explain assumptions you make at every part of the tree. Okay, and then what you do is you calculate bottoms up. You go from your tree, you go up to the beginning. Bottoms up aggregation. And then at the end, you check your number. Do sanity check. So I know that this sounds a little bit too high level yet, but I think as soon as we see the how to solve this, is going to be really clear. All right. So let's start with the question. What's the question, right? The question is, you know, you have a colony of 10,000 people. How much storage do you need to support email? All right, so that's the question. So let's start with the first one. Let's scope it down. So interesting, would be interesting to see what are your thoughts on this, you know, like what comes to your mind when you hear this question, you know, you have to support email to these people. What do you need to know to actually make sure that you calculate what they are telling you to calculate?
And does the email support multimedia messages or just straight up text messages?
What is your question again?
So, does the email does do we need the email to support multimedia messages
I
like pictures and video, or are we gonna just do text messages?
text message or rich media or
Yeah.
both? Okay. Um,
Um,
that's a good question. So I would say, well, what do you think?
I mean, if it is going to be in Mars, I don't think they need any images. So another question would be, are we starting a new? Is this the first email server, or is it? Are we trying to do an email service which is already there? So are we the first service or are we the second service? I ask that question because if it is the first service, usually there is no content yet on the service, so I don't expect people to use consume a lot of storage.
Okay, so is this something like from scratch? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's a good question. So, but you didn't answer to me this. Let's say I say, hey, what do you think?
If it is going to be the first service, I think we should only start with text messages and then scale up.
So I would disagree with this because if we're talking about a Mars colony, that means our civilization has advanced to the level of being able to establish a colony on Mars. Definitely everything is rich media, videos, photos, like we have robots there, we have a bunch of stuff to support life on Mars. Yeah. So text is like what? Yeah.
Yeah, but I have a counter question. How about this, right? So yeah, we should be an advanced civilization on Earth, but transmitting images would be expensive. I think setting up a server locally so that people in Mars, the 10,000 people in Mars, can talk to each other without communicating back to Earth would be cheaper. You know what I mean? I'm talking about like communicating in between Earth and Mars or inside Mars itself. There is a difference. Does that make sense?
Okay, so but that brings a very good question also,
A
which
constraint.
is, are we talking about emails just between the colony, or are we also talking about emails coming from Earth? Right? That's I think an important question. Emails from Earth too, because if that is the case, I would agree more with Arsen. People would like to send photos to their loved ones. But those are two questions. We're just talking about the scope, okay? Okay. So one other important question is, how long do we need to store it? I think that's the most important question. What else?
Do we need replication? And that's number one, replication, disaster recovery. And two is um, replication, disaster recovery.
Good
Yeah.
question. That's very good. Anything else?
Do we need headroom? Usually, there's when you plan capacity, you
Mm-hmm.
actually plan headroom. It's not like you say, well, that's how much it's going to take. You actually say, I'm going to build in 50% headroom or 30% headroom in case my assumptions are a little off so the service doesn't go down, right? So, headroom, which is, 30, 50%, yeah, depending.
Okay. Good questions. All right. I think we
So,
covered.
so one more thing is, Malena, is as I was thinking about it, and also I was started thinking about IoT, robots, and other things. So I'm thinking, because I actually did two calculations in my spreadsheet for this, which is one, just humans, and two, humans plus robots, which means in order to support that large civilization, it means robotics has advanced, and we have beyond robots, we have a lot of IoT devices. Your fridge, your door lock, this, that, constantly sending you emails, messages, this, that, which could be video feed from your door, It could be picture from there's a movement in your room and it's sending you. Like I have that even now at home. So all of these things you can have email messages from a bunch of IoT devices and robots coming through.
Awesome, awesome thought. I love that. Another thing that I would add here is, that's a very good thought. Another thing is that I would add here is email the only way of communicating on channel? Okay, because what happens is that if there are other channels, people may be using, you know, those more than email.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because like VR helmets maybe or something, then they don't need to email. Yeah.
Yeah. So that can, you know, that can affect your calculations. Anyways, those are very good questions and perfect. I mean, and when they ask you this, you know, like for this one, is it rich or text message? Well, the thing is that I would ask, you know, do we need to also respond to emails from Earth? If that is the case, then we do need rich media. Is it from scratch? You know, yeah, they might say yes, most likely, you know, because they want the computations. They don't want you to spend too much time on this. How long to store for? That's crucial, right? So in this case, we're going to say 1 year. Replication, that's also important. Headroom, emails from devices, you know, so
active user.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I said active users, but that might not make a difference.
Like you mean segmenting the population?
Yeah,
Are they all?
Let's not go there yet.
Okay,
that's part of the equation. Okay. Right now, we're just going to scoping down what you need to count. Okay.
What about population growth factors? Maybe it's 10,000, and we're planning to bring in 100,000 more people. So maybe like growth factors for the population.
Yeah, I mean, but we're asking you for 1 year, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Gonna grow that much, so the whole point here is to come up with questions that are really important.
Okay.
Okay. So very well. They're trying to see if you're thinking about everything that's really important. I think that the growth and stuff like that is nice, but it's not crucial. Okay. Especially if they're asking you for 1 year. So now that we scope it down, and let's say we're going to have some answers here. Okay. Let's say I'm the interviewer and I tell you from scratch, it is from scratch. Okay. We're going to have both media, emails from Earth too. To simplify things, I'm going to say no here. Okay, you can try to solve this question later with adding that factor, which makes it more complicated. How long to store for 1 year? Replication, these are good things, but I would probably say no here, because what I'm interested in is to see how you think, not to spend time on calculations, okay? Emails from devices, I'm going to also say probably here no, because that's going to take longer, and is email the only communication channel. Now here, I'm going to say no. It's most likely that people are going to have text messages and stuff like that. So depending on what the answers are, now you start thinking, okay, thank you very much. Okay, now can I take a minute, to think about, how am I going to frame this estimation question? So they're going to give you a minute. So you go to your notepad or whatever you're using, and then start thinking about what is the drive, what are the drivers of this, what are the parameters that are driving this total number that they're asking you? What are the parameters that are driving storage? What drives storage? So we said users, right? So the first thing I would jot down is number of users. And I'm going to think, okay, number of users in this colony, and they're sending emails, right? Number of emails. And they say it's for 1 year, I need to calculate. This is important. It's very hard to figure out how many emails you send per year, but it's easier to calculate how many emails you usually send per day, right? So use the sort of timeline that seems more familiar, easier to figure it out. So users, emails per day, and then you say, okay, there are 360 days in a year, right? This you should do in 1 minute, okay? Because these are the drivers. Number of users, numbers of emails per day, and then the days per year. So once you have your driver, right, the thing that you need to notice is that right away, in all these problems, in the majority of them, there is a category or segmentation, okay? Because it is never that easy, right? You have to segment. And you need to figure out here, what is the metric, the parameter that will vary, right? Will have a segmentation. In this case, it's definitely the number of emails that people send, right? People send different numbers of emails. So you notice that right away and just keep it in your head, okay?
Quick question. So how, I mean, I understand that we are looking at how many emails are being sent, but what if we categorize the amount of space used per user?
The
Like
amount
amount of amount of storage space used per user. Let's say we have 10,000 people, correct? So let's say initially, since we are starting from scratch, let's say everybody uses half a gig
why
of
are you saying
space.
that? But you have to explain where you come up with half a gig from.
No, that could be variable, right? Let's call it X, right? Let's call what the average space used by the particular user X, or
Mm-hmm.
any variable that could change. We can estimate how that number can fit in, but into the 10,000 times, that would be the total storage space we would need, because some of them we use more than the average and some of them we use less than the average. That way we can come zero down to that number more quickly than thinking about in terms of how many emails are sent per day.
So how are you going to calculate the numbers of bytes that each person needs?
So that's when we have to figure out how many of them are business users and how many of them are personal users. I don't know if
What is the usage? What is their usage dependent on? The usage of bytes. Tell me, what is the usage of bytes in email depending on?
uh, so you could say that right now in Gmail, right? You can take a parallel example, saying that in Gmail right now, an average user uses around 6 to 7 gig of space, right?
How do you know
And
that?
I mean, that is, I mean, I think I know that number somewhere. I looked it up.
Yeah, that's
Because
not good enough, right? So
no, 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 no. I'm really close to the actual number, because when you go to gmail.com without logging in, the amount of space you get from Gmail.
yeah, Padma, but that doesn't matter in this question, right? Because you cannot come up. What they're trying to test is whether you actually can estimate that number without knowing that it's 6 gigabytes.
Okay.
That's the whole point, right?
Yeah, I understand.
I cannot come to that interview and say, hey, you know what? Gmail per user 6 gigabytes, so I'm going to multiply 6 gigabytes. So that doesn't make any sense, right? What they're trying to see if you can actually come up with that number.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so here is how do you estimate, right? Quickly, number of users, number of emails per day, and then the days per year. That's just the top equation, right? So when you now say, you come back to the interview and say, okay, a way to estimate this is by figuring out, first of all, how many emails per day are the users send, and then oh, I didn't put here, you guys didn't catch me, which is the average size per email, right? So average size per email times 365 days per year. Right, so if you figure out, we have the number of users, the number of emails, how much each email takes in terms of storage, times the number of days, then you get with the total number of bytes that all the users need per year. So you start explaining that, and then you start with your tree, right? Which is, okay, it's the fourth part. This is the third part. The fourth part is your tree. And you start, okay, so it's going to be total storage. And make sure that you remember to put here that is for 1 year. That's really crucial because you can forget. You can forget that you're doing this for a year and think that you're doing this for a day. It happens, especially if you're nervous, right? And so now that you have, the total storage per year, then you say, okay, so from here, what I need to calculate is, we have the number of users in the colony, multiply by the number of emails they send in per day, times average size per email, times 365 days. And then you keep going down here and say, okay, so this is about the number of emails per day. And this is what you remember what you were thinking here, right? This is a segmentation. So you know what? This is going to be actually an average, depending on how frequently people send emails, right? And I'm going to average this and say that, there are going to be high frequency users of emails. So for the high frequency user email, high frequency number of emails per day, there's going to be medium frequency emails per day. And there's going to be the person that doesn't send too many emails per day. But each of these categories of people, it's not going to be the same, right? So the weight on the rates of sending emails per day is going to be different, right? Because they're, it's not uniform. Some people send more emails than others, right? So I would say, at this point that, I'm going to put this as grade number 3. This is going to be grade number 2, and grade number 1. I will calculate this in a minute, right? But now so that we have this information, we can then calculate, the average, which is going to be here. It's a weighted average, right? With the total of emails per day. So emails per day is going to be, R1 times the number of emails sent by the high frequency, R2 times the number of emails sent by the medium frequency, R3 the number of emails sent by the lower frequency. And once I calculate this number here, I also need to calculate the average size per email and multiply by 365. So let's go now one by one. So the reason why you do this tree is because your brain cannot do calculations and trying to think about what to multiply with what at the same time. You can get really confused, okay? That's why you put the tree first and it's clear what you're multiplying, right? And at the end, what you do, you go bottoms up and start calculating, start from the leaves going up to the total. Make sense?
Yes, it's really, really great technique. Yeah.
So now, when I'm explaining to the interviewer my tree, I explain it just like we do, and then say, okay, so now let me start calculating. All right. And I would say, okay, this is the important part of the interview, which is, can you come up with an explanation of why you are using certain numbers? Okay. So for example, for grade R1, I'm going to say we have high frequency users. This is R1 for high frequency users, R2 and R3. Okay. How, what's the percentage distribution of high frequency, medium frequency, and low frequency? Well, I would say, that in general, because there are other channels of communications in this colony, and we know that today not people are actually using email less and less because they're using text messages and they're using chats, they're using social networks and stuff like that. Even if you look at the Asian countries, right, they hardly use email, and that's about 20% of the population, right? I would guess that about 20% of people, if you take a sample of the entire people in the world, 20% is a low email user, right? Would you agree with that?
I think it will be more than 20%. I think more than half of the world will not have internet at this point. So, hello.
What did you say, Padma?
I said like the number of people who will not use email. And you said in the world, right?
Well, obviously, I'm talking about people that have internet, right? People that have internet but choose not to use email.
Not to use email or not to communicate over email. Because like let's say for my in according to me, right, I use my Gmail. You check my Gmail every day pretty much, maybe more close to 30 to 40 minutes in a day, but I hardly send any emails unless I need to, because I communicate using other ways with my friends. I don't communicate.
This is the situation where you cannot use yourself as a sample, right? You have to use numbers, statistical numbers, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I agree. So I mean, I'm saying using the current world example will be not a good analysis, because even in the current world, I don't think many people use email, personal email. You're talking about personal email, right? So personal email, how many people are using personal email in the current age to communicate, and how many of them are just using it for formal or official purposes? I think numbers would be vastly different. Uh, I mean, you will have an email account, but how many emails are you sending from that personal email account? That's my question.
Okay.
Do you think all? Yeah.
So you have to come up with some explanation as to what your gut feeling is this or not, right? So my explanation for saying, what, the people that have internet but choose to not use email that much, that are sending, not too many emails, but are using actually text messages, seems to be like 20% of the population.
Okay.
Okay. Because why? Because I'm assuming, I'm putting here like Asian countries and all those countries that are using more of like WeChat and all the stuff. In the middle, I imagine the majority is in the middle, right? And another minority is in the high frequency usage, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to guess here that this is about 60% of the population, 80, and this is also about maybe 20%. Okay. So, being that there's a lack of knowledge precisely, I'm estimating this based on what I've seen, reading on the news, which countries are less prone to using email or not, and also, how people are using less email today than in the past. What I'd like to ask you guys is, could you come up with a different rate, but not based on just an opinion, okay? That doesn't count here. Can you come up with different rates, but based on some kind of statistic or observation?
So, Malena, when I was trying to estimate, what I did segment the emails into emails per day into how many emails would include a video, how many would include a picture, and how many would include just like pure text. And based on that, I estimated the size of an email containing video, image, and a text. And then I kind of rolled it up into an average size per day.
But you didn't segment it. So you calculated an average size, but you didn't segment into different frequencies of usage of mail by the population.
That's right. You're right. So I did segment it for that part, but the other part, yes, you're right. Usage, I kind of said everybody uses emails like 50 times per day, and that's it, which I now feel is ridiculously large, and especially given your advice in terms of, yeah, actually people use emails less and less, and there's probably going to be other modes of communication. But yeah, so I did not segment other parts.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, that's the simpler way of doing it. But I think if you go into deeper details, it's better because that shows that you're thinking more deeper into the usage, right? Into the use cases.
For sure.
So that's sort of like the way we explain my rates and my weights on this. And then I will go, okay, so number of emails per day. You know what? I consider myself into the medium category of people that send email. But, you know, I send email less than actually in the past. So I usually send 10 emails a day. Okay? And I would guess that a lower frequency user, maybe it's half. Probably like somebody like my mother, you know, that just reads email maybe once a day, you know, and sends emails to her cousin or nephews and whatever. And other people that are using more text messages and stuff like that, and not using email so much. And then there are the high frequency users, which I'm going to say is double to emails, to the medium one. So I would say 20 emails per day. You know, I don't see myself sending more than 10. How about you? Do you think these numbers are reasonable?
They make good sense. Yep.
How much emails do you guys send?
Yeah, 20 emails sounds like an average, a good number.
20 emails seems like a lot, right? But yeah. I think people that are high frequency users probably send a little bit more than that.
Again, I mean, maybe, I don't know if it applies here, but usually they say the 80-20 rule. Usually, like 80% of your usage will be coming from the 20% of the people. So
yeah, I don't think that applies here. So, okay. You know, whenever you're giving a reason, you have to base your reasoning on use case.
Okay.
Not on a rule. I don't know how that rule applies here. But anyways, so that's how I come up with this. Okay, so now it's easy to use this and come up with the tree, right? So okay, 20%, 20% of high users, 60% of medium users, 20% of low frequency users. So 20% of 20 emails, that's 4. 60% of 10 emails, that's 6. And 20% of 5 emails is 1, right? So that's 10, about 11 emails per day, right? So that's the number for this box. Average size of email. So let's do what Arsen did. So I would say average size. Usually, I would say it's composed of text and rich media. I would say photo. Is that what you included, Arsen? And text is about 10K bytes per email, right? A photo, it's about, attachment, photo, it's about like 2 megabytes. So if you're sending attachments through email, I would say that an email is probably 10 megabytes. right? And now we have to come up with an average. Arsen, is that the way you did it?
Malena, I'm watching this on iPhone, and I just can't zoom in to see that number there.
Oh, I see. Okay, no, don't worry.
So what I did is basically like email size per like one of the three like types, video, photo, and so on. But my video was like 50 megs. But then you're right, it doesn't pass sanity check because I doubt you'll be able to send 50 megs over email unless it's maybe they communicate a lot of video on Mars. Then it would. But yeah, otherwise currently no. Yeah, so I agree with your numbers. Yeah.
All right, so to take an average, I think that more people send. I don't send a photo all the time with emails. So I would say that one, maybe 1 out of 10 emails, it's a photo, has a photo attachment.
I have a quick question. So when you say one email, right? Let's say person A sends an email with 10 MB attachment to person B. Where are we counting that size to? Are we attaching the size to person A or person B? Because both should be able to view the email. Correct?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
So let's say person A is sending an email to person B with an attachment of 10 MB video or 5 MB video, whatever the size would be. Are we attaining the storage to person A or person B? Because both should have
We're
access.
just counting emails that are being sent because you only need to store them once, right? So I'm saying in order to calculate the average of size of an email, I'm guessing that about 2% of all emails sent are 10 megabytes, and 80% are 10K. So that would be 2 megabytes plus 8K. That's really 2 megabytes, about 2 megabytes on average, right? Because not all the emails that we send have photos. Arsen, did you come up with this number, 2 megabytes or something higher? Anyways, so the average, on average, what is the size of an email? Based on these assumptions that I think, 20% of emails have a photo attachment and 80% don't have, it's about 2 megabytes. So, given this average size, I put that here, 2 megabytes. And then I have 365 days. So now what's my result? So if it's easy to see it's a multiplication of all these things, right? So total storage is going to be 10,000 times 11 days, 11 emails per day, times 2 megabytes per email, times 365 days per year. So what is this? That's 22 megabytes times 10 to the 4 times 365 days. So 300, let's make that 400 because it's closer to 400. So it's 400 times 22. So that's about 88 times 88 megabytes times 10 to the 6. So that's about 8.8. 8.8. Let's see, 8.8 petabytes total. So I come up with 8.8 petabytes total. Now, so we did this bottom-up calculation. How do we know that this is in the ballpark? You know, a good way to check would be to, you know, divide this 8.8, which is about 9 petabytes. You know, this is sanity check. I would say, okay, 8.8 petabytes divided by all the people in the colony. You know, how much is that? That's about 9 petabytes, you know, divided by 10,000, right? It's 10 to the minus 4 petabytes. That's 10 to the 4, 10 to the minus 4, okay. So petabytes 10 to the 12, so that's 9 times, you know, 10 to the 8, about bytes. 12.4, yeah. So 0.9 gigabytes. That seems low, right? Because in a year, I use what, 4 gigabytes or less. So this seems to be like at least, you know, 1 order of magnitude too low. Did I make a miscalculation?
I mean, so I mean, again, I know you said there is only going to be one email being stored, but we are not calculating for, like, let's say person A sends person B a 10 MB email, and person B sends person C another the same email, forwards the same email to person C. Are we storing the email just once or twice?
Once. I would not store it twice. I would store it once.
For all the forwards, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I noticed that I forgot something here. Let's see, 22 times. Okay, I'm just going through my calculation. 10 to the 4, 365. So 22. So that's 88. 10 to the 6. Well, it seems okay. 8.8. 6. This is 7. Oh, I see. Yeah, this is 88 petabytes, not 8.8. Okay, so this is 88 petabytes. So that's about 90. So that's about 9, and this is minus 3. So that makes sense. So that's not 9, and 12, 3, that's 9. So that's 9 gigabytes. That makes sense. And 9 gigabytes now makes more sense per year, right? So this is sort of like your sanity check, right? Where you're like, okay, if I divide all the petabytes times the number of people in the colony, it's about, you know, 9 gigabytes, and that's about right for somebody that uses, for example, email today through, you know, storage for a year. So, are there any questions you guys have about this?
I mean, do you think 9 gigabytes a year is so? Is that for a normal user, or is it for a advanced user?
So we're computing here an average, right? So we're saying this is sort of like the sanity check, right, for average user.
Yes.
Arsen, did you come up with a similar number?
I think
he's
not. But I'm thinking. I think, I mean, so when I was doing my calculations before the call started, I was just giving not more than 1 gig of data per year per user. So 10,000 people would be 10,000 gigabytes, right? I mean, let's start with the lower. Let's start with a modest. I'm not. It might go up and down a bit, but if you think about it, right, 10,000 gigabytes is
10 gigabytes, right?
No, 10. So, no. What I'm saying is we have 10,000 people in Mars, correct? We need to estimate for 10,000 people, correct? So, let's say every user, we give them 1 gigabyte of storage to start with. Let's start with that assumption. So, we need at least 10,000 gigabytes of storage to start with. Okay. And then I assume that 20% of these 10,000 people will be advanced users, and 20% of them will not use the service at all. Okay, 60% of the users will use the service maybe 50% of the time. They are mediocre users in the middle, correct?
Yeah.
So the advanced users might use 8 or 9 gig a year. That was my highest estimate. And the users who never use might use less than 1 gig, right? And most of the, I mean, if you think about it that way, and most of the users might use 4 gigs, right? So that would be 13 plus 114 gigs on an average of 10,000 people.
Anyways, the number is not so important. What's important?
The calculation is,
it's
the approach.
Process
Yeah.
Of the calculation, right? And you might be off by an order of magnitude, right? But you might be able to explain it, right? But what's really important is how you got there. Right?
Yeah.
So Malena, I think you were asking me a question and my connection went bad. So my number was, so around, like, I think I don't have the computer in front of me now, but about 650 or maybe 800 petabytes, not terabytes, but petabytes. Here's some of the things that went into my assumptions. Number one is that I was doing capacity planning for 5 years, and my assumption was that the storage should be infinite, which is what we now expect pretty much from, Hotmail, Gmail. It's for an infinite amount of time. But I basically planned the time horizon for 5 years, and that's it.
Yeah, that's why your number is higher. Actually, I would have expected it to be a lot more higher. But,
yeah, so headroom was 30%.
Yeah.
In addition, I assume that on Mars the civilization would be highly collaborative, so number of messages would be higher, and that's where I think I made a mistake, is because I forgot, and you rightly pointed out, probably they'll be using other methods than kind of like offline communication, which is what email is, right?
Yeah.
They'll be using rich media, video, and whatever, but probably real time, not like, hey, record a video and send it to each other.
Right.
So that's why my numbers are like off by a huge order of like several orders of magnitude, pretty much.
But you have a very good explanation for those. So that's the only thing that matters. And actually, I like Arsen very much that you brought the notion of the headroom as well as the robots, right? Of devices. That's something I didn't think of, but that's something that probably is what you would expect in Mars. Yeah, very well. All right.
Thank you.
You like this question?
I like it a lot. I like all your questions, man. That's the thing. You come up with, like, I use a lot of practice questions, but you come up with some really, really good one. I was like, how did you come up with those questions? They're really great and actually very realistic to what will be asked, like in interviews. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, so if you guys want to practice more estimations, let me know. I'm right now practicing a lot of them. So Arsene and Padma, if you want to get on a mock interview and practice estimation, let me know.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure,
Appreciate it.
Malana. Thank you.
All right. Thank you,
Have
guys.
a good night.
Thank you, man. Thanks, guys.
I like
Thanks,
your
Padma.
board though. The board behind you.
The best
It's
purchase I've
so,
done.
that was a very good purchase.
Totally.
Yeah, bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.